The first signs came from the outer rim monitoring stations. Stars were going dark, not in the natural way of stellar death, but in perfect silence. No radiation burst, no gravitational waves, just absence where burning giants once stood. The Meridian Alliance's greatest minds struggled to explain the phenomenon as it crept closer to the core worlds, leaving dead space in its wake. High Counselor Venera stood before the massive observation window of the celestial spire, her iridescent scales reflecting the artificial light of the chamber. The capital world of Meridia Prime stretched below, its gleaming towers reaching toward the stars that still burned in their sky. For now, another system lost, reported Science Director Zinthar, his holographic form flickering with static. The Proxima cluster has gone completely dark. 18 billion lives just vanished. Venera's secondary hearts constricted. The Proxima cluster had been home to some of the Alliance's most advanced research facilities. Show me the final transmissions. The air before her filled with cascading data streams. The last messages from Proxima told a story of confusion rather than terror. No attacks, no violence, just a gradual dimming of their sun until all energy simply ceased to exist. We've detected something, Zinthar continued, manipulating the holographic display. The quantum resonance scans reveal structures within the dead zones, crystalline entities, massive beyond comprehension. They appear to be feeding on stellar energy itself. The display shifted to show geometric patterns, beautiful in their complexity yet terrifying in their implication. These weren't ships or weapons in any conventional sense. They were something far more fundamental to reality itself. Have the Arcturians responded to our request for aid? Venera asked, though she already knew the answer. The ancient race had retreated into isolation centuries ago, leaving the younger species to govern the galaxy. No, High Counselor, but we've detected unusual activity in the uncharted regions. Ships of unknown design have been engaging the crystal entities. The display changed again, showing grainy footage of sleek vessels darting between the crystalline masses. Their movements were erratic by Alliance standards, yet somehow purposeful. Who are they? We believe they're human vessels, High Counselor. Venera's dorsal spines stiffened. Humans, the galaxy's newest spacefaring species, barely 2 centuries into faster-than-light travel. The Alliance had dismissed them as primitive, their systems quarantined due to their volatile nature and constant internal conflicts. Impossible. The human territories are nowhere near the affected regions. That's just it, High Counselor. They're not from the quarantine zone. These appear to be independent colonies, established in secret beyond Alliance space. And they're fighting back. Successfully. The footage showed one of the human ships executing a maneuver that should have torn it apart. Instead, it delivered some kind of payload directly into one of the crystal entities. The massive structure shuddered, its perfect geometry distorting before it shattered into countless fragments. How? Venera demanded. Our most powerful weapons barely leave a mark on these things. We're not sure. The humans are using technology we've never seen before. It's crude by our standards. But Zinthar paused, his holographic form wavering. They're achieving results. Venera turned back to the window, watching the endless flow of traffic through Meridia Prime's skylanes. Her people had built an empire spanning thousands of worlds, achieved technological mastery that bordered on the miraculous. Yet here they stood, helpless before an enemy that defied their understanding. Open a channel to these human colonies, she ordered, and prepare my personal shuttle. High Counselor, the Alliance Charter explicitly forbids direct contact with quarantine species. The Charter also assumes we'll have a galaxy left to govern. Venera's scales shifted to the deep blue of absolute authority. The crystal entities have consumed 12 major systems in the past lunar cycle alone. If these humans have found a way to fight them, I intend to know how. The first response came not from the colonies, but from a single ship that appeared at the edge of Meridian space. Its design was unlike anything in Alliance records. All sharp angles and exposed weapon systems, more akin to a mobile fortress than a diplomatic vessel. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the independent vessel Starbreaker." The transmission began. A human female appeared on the main display, her features set in what Venera's xenopsychology training suggested was grim determination. "We understand you have a problem with some uninvited guests. Captain Chen, I am High Counselor Venera of the Meridian Alliance. Your presence in Alliance space is a violation of multiple treaties. With all due respect, Counselor, those treaties assumed humanity would stay in its designated playpen. We didn't. Now we can either discuss galactic law, or we can talk about saving what's left of civilization. Your choice." Venera studied the human's expression. There was something there that she recognized from historical records of her own people's ancient past, a hunger for achievement mixed with complete disregard for established limits. "The Alliance has monitored your encounters with the crystal entities," Venera said carefully. "Your ships have demonstrated capabilities we thought impossible." "That's because you people think too linearly," Chen replied. "You see these crystals as an unstoppable force of nature. We see them as a puzzle to be solved. And humans, we're really good at solving puzzles, especially when someone says it can't be done. You've developed effective weapons. Better, we've developed an understanding. These things aren't just eating stars. They're trying to communicate. Your civilization is so advanced that you've forgotten how to think primitively. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The human captain's words stung Venera's pride, but she couldn't deny the evidence. "What are you proposing?" "A partnership. You have the resources and infrastructure we lack. We have the perspective and creativity you need. Together, we might just have a chance at stopping these things before they consume the entire galaxy." Venera thought of the billions already lost, of the darkness spreading across the stars like a cancer. The Alliance had spent generations building walls between species, creating hierarchies and protocols. Now those same walls might doom them all. The Alliance Council will never agree to this. "Then it's a good thing you're not calling to ask for permission." Chen's expression shifted to what might have been a smile. "You're calling because you've already decided to act. The only question is, how many more stars have to die before you admit that you need us?" Venera looked out at her city one last time, wondering if she was about to save her civilization or destroy everything it stood for. Perhaps both. "Very well, Captain Chen. Let's talk about saving the galaxy." Dr. Maya Patel hadn't expected to present her findings in the legendary Hall of Knowledge, where the Meridian Alliance's greatest scientific achievements were born. The vast chamber's crystalline walls held centuries of accumulated wisdom, yet none of it had prepared them for the current crisis. She stood before the assembled council, acutely aware that she was the first human to ever set foot in this sacred space. "The crystal entities aren't consuming stars," she began, her voice steadied despite the gravity of the situation. "They're transforming them into something else entirely. Each star they touch becomes part of a vast network, a pattern we're only beginning to understand." The holographic display above her head showed the spread of darkened systems, but now overlaid with lines of invisible energy that her team had detected. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their gravity chairs, their bioluminescent patterns betraying their unease. "Impossible," declared first scientist Carnval, his scales flushing with skepticism. "We've monitored every quantum frequency, every subspace dimension. There is no energy remaining in the affected systems." Maya allowed herself a small smile. "That's because you're looking for energy as you understand it. These beings exist in what we call quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent, operating on principles that defy conventional physics." She gestured, and the display shifted to show her experimental data. 3 days ago, we managed to establish brief contact with one of the smaller entities. The results were extraordinary. The recording played, showing a crystalline structure responding to precisely calibrated quantum pulses. Instead of the usual destructive reaction, the entity had resonated, producing patterns that Maya's team had spent days decoding. They're not invaders, she continued. They're refugees. Their own universe is dying, and they're attempting to create a bridge between their reality and ours. Each transformed star becomes an anchor point for this bridge. The chamber erupted in murmurs and flashing scales. High Counselor Venera raised a hand for silence. If what you say is true, Dr. Patel, they're still destroying our galaxy to save themselves. Yes and no. Maya brought up another display, this one showing her proposed solution. We don't have to choose between their survival and ours. My team has developed a theoretical framework for controlled quantum transformation. Instead of letting them convert entire stars, we can help them establish stable microconnections. Captain Chen, standing at the back of the chamber, stepped forward. That's why the independent colonies have been more successful in fighting them. We weren't trying to destroy them. We were accidentally disrupting their conversion process in a way that made them notice us. Precisely. Maya highlighted sections of her data. The crystal entities are so far beyond us technologically that they didn't even register our existence at first. Our weapons weren't hurting them. They were more like taps on the shoulder, making them aware that this universe was inhabited. First, scientist Carnval Scales had shifted to the deep green of intense thought. Your proposal would require technology we don't possess. The energy requirements alone would be massive. Maya finished. That's where the Alliance comes in. We need your infrastructure, your power generation capabilities, combined with human ingenuity and our understanding of quantum mechanics. Understanding. Carnval interrupted. Your species only achieved quantum teleportation 2 centuries ago. We mastered it millennia before your ancestors left their caves. And that's exactly why we can see solutions you can't. Maya's voice took on an edge of passion. We're still asking the basic questions, still looking at problems from angles that you've long since dismissed. Your mastery of quantum physics is precisely what's holding you back. You know too much to see the impossible possibilities. High Counselor Venera leaned forward. Explain. The Alliance has spent thousands of years perfecting existing technologies, refining them to their theoretical limits. Humans? We're still in our technological adolescence. We try things that shouldn't work because we don't know better. And sometimes, she gestured to her data, sometimes they do work. The display shifted to show a prototype device, a hybrid of Alliance precision engineering and human theoretical physics. This quantum resonance array can establish stable communications with the entities. With Alliance power sources, we can scale it up to offer them an alternative to star consumption. And if you're wrong, another council member asked, if they refuse to communicate, then we adapt. We try something else. That's what humans do. We don't accept no-win scenarios. We keep pushing, keep trying new approaches until we find one that works. Captain Chen stepped fully into the light. The crystal entities have already consumed 23 star systems. They're not slowing down. We can stick to established protocols and watch our galaxy die, or we can take a chance on something new. Maya watched the council members communicate in rapid patterns of light and color. She knew what they were thinking. Their civilization had risen to dominance through careful adherence to proven principles. Now they were being asked to throw those principles aside and embrace chaos. The device will take 3 standard weeks to construct, she added quietly. In that time, based on current patterns, we'll lose another 30 systems. How many more lives are we willing to sacrifice to maintain our certainties? High Counselor Venera's scales shifted through a complex series of colors before settling on the deep blue of decision. Proceed with construction, Dr. Patel. Captain Chen, coordinate with our fleet to protect the construction site. She turned to address the council. Let history record that in our darkest hour, we chose to listen to new voices. As Maya gathered her data crystals, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. The Alliance was taking an unprecedented risk, putting their faith in human intuition over proven science. She only hoped she could prove them right. Doctor, Captain Chen called as they left the chamber. Do you really think we can communicate with these things? Maya thought of all the impossible things humanity had already achieved, of all the barriers they'd broken simply because no one had told them they couldn't. "We have to try," she replied, "because if we don't, who will?" The quantum resonance array hung in space like a giant spider web, its delicate filaments stretching across the void between 3 moons of the gas giant Helios VI. Dr. Maya Patil watched from the observation deck of the Alliance science vessel Eternal Discovery as the final calibrations were made. 2 weeks of non-stop construction, and they were almost ready. Almost wasn't good enough. Multiple entity signatures detected. The Alliance sensor operator's scales flashed urgent patterns of warning. "They're emerging from quantum space directly into the Helios system." Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Status of the array: 87% complete." Maya responded, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "We need at least 95 for stable communication." "You've got 10 minutes." Chen's ship, the Starbreaker, moved to intercept alongside the Alliance defense fleet. "After that, we'll have company." The crystal entities emerged like shards of darkness against the stars, their geometric forms defying natural law. Maya counted 6 of them, the largest group they'd encountered yet. The Helios star dimmed noticeably as they approached, their quantum fields already beginning the transformation process. "Array at 90%, reported Chief Engineer Kelvin, his tentacles weaving complex patterns as he worked multiple control interfaces simultaneously. "But the power grid is showing signs of strain. We're pushing the reactors beyond safety limits." Maya fought down her frustration. The Alliance's technology was incredibly advanced, but it wasn't designed for the kind of quantum manipulation they were attempting. Human ingenuity could only stretch its capabilities so far. New contacts. The sensor operator's scales went pale. Smaller entities, hundreds of them, surrounding the primary formations. The tactical display showed the situation in stark detail. The crystal entities had adapted, creating smaller versions of themselves to counter the Alliance fleet's defensive strategies. They were learning, evolving their approach. "Array at 93%, Kelvin announced. "But we're losing stability in sections 7 through 12. Captain Chen's voice was tense. "The smaller crystals are moving to engage. We can't hold them all back." Maya watched as the human and Alliance ships moved in perfect coordination, their weeks of joint training paying off. But there were too many targets, too many angles of attack. A group of crystal fragments slipped through the defensive screen, heading straight for the array. "Reroute power from sections 7 through 12, Maya ordered. "Concentrate everything on the primary transmission node." "That will collapse a third of the array structure," Kelvin protested. "Better than losing it all. Do it." The engineer complied, his movements swift and precise. On the tactical display, portions of the array began to fade as power was diverted. The approaching crystal fragments passed through the depowered sections, seemingly confused by the lack of energy to interact with. "Array at 95%, Kelvin reported. "Primary node is ready." Maya initiated the transmission sequence, her heart pounding. Everything they'd theorized, everything they'd built, came down to this moment. The array hummed to life, quantum resonance waves rippling out toward the approaching entities. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. The crystal beings continued their advance, the star continued to dim, and Maya felt the weight of failure pressing down on her. Then one of the entities changed course. Its geometric pattern shifted, angles realigning as it moved toward the array's transmission point. The others followed, their smaller fragments rejoining the main structures. "They're responding," Maya breathed. "Quick, input the mathematical sequence." The array pulsed with new patterns, transmitting the complex quantum language they'd developed. The crystal entities halted their advance, their forms resonating in harmony with the transmission. "We're receiving a response," Kelvin reported, his scales flickering with excitement. "The patterns, they're unlike anything in our databases." Maya smiled. "That's because they're not meant to be stored in a database. They're meant to be felt." She closed her eyes, letting her quantum consciousness interface translate the alien thoughts into something her human mind could comprehend. Images flooded her awareness. A dying universe, countless crystal beings fleeing the collapse of reality itself, searching desperately for a new home. They hadn't known this universe was inhabited. Their perception of reality was so different that organic life had been invisible to them. "Tell the fleet to stand down," she ordered. "They're not here to destroy. They're here to survive." The crystal entities moved closer, their geometric patterns shifting into new configurations. Through the array, Maya felt their curiosity, their relief at finally being understood. But there was something else, something urgent. "They're trying to warn us," she realized. "The collapse of their universe, it's spreading. That's why they're transforming stars. They're trying to create a barrier to protect both our realities." Captain Chen's voice was skeptical. "Can we trust them?" Maya watched as one of the entities extended a crystalline tendril toward the array, its quantum pattern expressing concepts that transcended language. "They're offering to teach us, to show us how to strengthen our reality against the collapse. But they need our help to do it." The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. The Alliance and humanity had prepared for war, only to find themselves faced with a chance for transformation instead. High Counselor Venra's voice came over the comm, carrying the weight of authority. "Dr. Patel, you've opened the door. Where do we go from here?" Maya looked at the crystal entities, their forms now pulsing with patterns that her enhanced perception recognized as excitement, hope, and something very much like friendship. "We go forward," she replied. "Together." The construction fleet moved through the void between Helios VI and its moons, their work illuminated by the crystalline beings that now hovered nearby, casting prismatic light across the emptiness of space. Dr. Maya Patel stood at her usual spot on the observation deck, but this time she wasn't alone. A geometric pattern of living crystal floated beside her, its form constantly shifting as it communicated through the quantum interface she now wore. The barrier must extend through 7-dimensional planes. The crystal being, which called itself Symphony of Order, explained through the interface. "Your species' grasp of quantum architecture is uniquely suited to this task." Maya nodded, understanding the implied meaning. Humans' limited understanding of quantum physics actually helped them conceptualize the impossible structures needed to reinforce the walls of reality. Sometimes ignorance truly was strength. "The Alliance's power grid is ready," reported Chief Engineer Kelvin from his station. "Though I still believe these modifications violate several fundamental laws of physics." "That's rather the point," Captain Chen commented as she entered the observation deck. "The laws of physics are exactly what's breaking down between universes. We need to think beyond them." The tactical display showed the progress of their work. A massive network of quantum resonance arrays and modified Alliance power stations, all working in concert with the crystal entities to create something entirely new. The Helios system had become a fortress, not against invasion, but against the collapse of reality itself. "First test phase is ready," Maya announced. "Symphony, if you would." The crystal being pulsed with acknowledgement, its form extending tendrils of pure quantum energy into the newly constructed network. The space around them seemed to ripple, dimensions folding in ways that made human eyes water and Alliance sensors scramble. "Quantum barrier holding at 30% capacity," Kelvin reported, his scales flickering with mixed anxiety and excitement. No sign of structural decay. Maya allowed herself a small smile. After weeks of collaboration, they were finally seeing results. The crystal entities had shared their knowledge of dimensional engineering, while humanity provided innovative applications and the Alliance supplied the raw power and precision technology needed to make it work. "We're detecting quantum tremors from the void," the sensor operator announced. "The collapse is accelerating in sectors 7 through 12. Symphony of Orders form shifted to a more urgent configuration. The barrier must be completed before the dimensional shockwave reaches this region of space. There will be no second chance." "How long do we have?" Chen asked, her hand unconsciously resting on her weapon. "At current propagation speeds, 48 of your hours," Symphony replied. "My people are evacuating the remaining sectors, but many will not survive the journey." Maya studied the tactical display, her mind racing through calculations. "We need more power. The barrier's taking shape, but at this rate, we won't achieve full coverage in time." High Counselor Venra's hologram appeared in the chamber. "The Alliance Council has approved the activation of the ancient archives. All stored power from our ancestors' technological achievements will be at your disposal." Maya's eyes widened. The ancient archives were the Alliance's most closely guarded secret, repositories of energy and technology accumulated over millennia. To access them now spoke volumes about how far the Alliance had come in trusting both humans and the crystal entities. "That's still not enough," Chen said, studying the power calculations. "We need something more, something impossible." Symphony of Order pulsed with what Maya had learned to recognize as curiosity. "Your species excels at achieving the impossible. What do you propose?" Chen turned to Maya with a familiar glint in her eye, the look of a human about to suggest something that violated every known law of physics. "What if we don't try to stop the shockwave? What if we redirect it? Redirect a quantum shockwave that's collapsing reality itself." Kelvin's scales flashed with disbelief. "The energy requirements would be exactly what we need." Maya finished, catching on to Chen's idea. "We can't generate enough power to create a perfect barrier, but we can create a quantum lens. Use the shockwave's own energy to power the final stage of the barrier's construction." Symphony of Order's form became perfectly still, a sign of deep contemplation. Such a strategy has never been attempted. "The risks are better than certain destruction," Chen finished. "My ship can position the primary lens array. We'll need the crystal entities to handle the quantum geometry, and the Alliance fleet to maintain power distribution." High Counselor Venra's hologram flickered as she processed the proposal. "The Council will never approve such a dangerous, untested strategy." "Good thing we're not asking for permission," Chen replied with a grim smile. "We're just letting you know where to point the power feeds when the time comes." Maya watched as Symphony of Order's form shifted through complex patterns, communicating with its fellow entities. Finally, it resolved into a configuration she recognized as determination. "We will assist," Symphony declared. "Your species' propensity for embracing chaos may be exactly what both our universes need." The next 40 hours were a blur of activity. Human ships darted between crystal entities, positioning quantum lens arrays with precision that bordered on reckless. Alliance vessels maintained a perfect power distribution grid, their ancient technology pushed to limits their creators never imagined. And through it all, the crystal beings wove impossible geometries in space itself, preparing for the moment of truth. Maya stood at her station, quantum interface humming with the combined consciousness of human, Alliance, and crystal entity controllers. Through it, she could feel the shock wave approaching, a tsunami of unraveling reality that threatened to unmake everything in its path. 10 minutes to impact," Kelvin announced, his voice steady despite his flickering scales. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Lens arrays in position, ready to redirect on your mark, Doctor." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the quantum mathematics flow through her mind. Everything they'd built, every impossible theory they'd tested, led to this moment. 3 civilizations working together to save not one universe, but 2. "May your gods help us all," High Counselor Venra whispered. Maya opened her eyes and allowed herself a small smile. "We don't need gods," she replied. "We have something better. We have each other." The shockwave approached, reality itself bending before it. Maya took a deep breath and gave the order that would either save them all or doom them completely. "Begin the sequence." Time seemed to slow as the quantum shockwave approached the Helios system. Through her interface, Maya could feel the very fabric of reality groaning under the strain. The crystal entities had arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern around the lens arrays, their forms pulsing with energy that defied conventional physics. Impact in 30 seconds. Kelvin announced, his scales now a steady pulse of focused concentration. Captain Chen's voice came through clear and calm. All ships in position. Power distribution grid holding steady. Symphony of Orders crystalline form blazed with internal light as it coordinated with its fellow entities. The geometry is set. We await your command, Dr. Patel. Maya took a deep breath, watching as the approaching wave of unreality bent light itself around its edges. Everything they'd theorized, everything they'd built, came down to this moment. 3 civilizations, each contributing what the others lacked: human intuition, alliance precision, and crystal entity understanding of quantum reality. 20 seconds to impact. Through the quantum interface, Maya could feel the collective consciousness of all 3 species working in perfect harmony. The human fleet crews with their controlled recklessness, the alliance operators with their flawless execution, and the crystal entities with their mastery of dimensional engineering. 10 seconds. All power to the lens arrays, Maya commanded. Prepare to initiate the redirect sequence. The space around them seemed to bend and twist as the shock wave made first contact with their outer sensor grid. Reality itself began to unravel at the edges of the Helios system. Now, everything happened at once. The crystal entities pulsed with impossible energy, their geometric forms creating patterns that human eyes couldn't process. The Alliance power grid channeled the accumulated energy of centuries into the lens arrays. Human ships darted between the arrays, making split-second adjustments that no computer could calculate. The shock wave hit their defensive line like a tsunami hitting the shore, but instead of destroying everything in its path, it began to curve, following the quantum geometries laid out by the crystal entities. The lens arrays glowed with power as they captured and redirected the wave's enormous energy. It's working. Kelvin's scales flashed with amazement. The wave is being channeled into the barrier construction sequence. Maya watched in awe as reality itself seemed to crystallize around them, forming layers of quantum-reinforced spacetime. The barrier was taking shape, not as a wall, but as a bridge between universes, a stable pathway that could sustain both forms of existence. Barrier integrity at 60%, Symphony reported. The energy conversion is exceeding projected efficiency. 70%, 80%. Captain Chen's ship narrowly avoided a tendril of uncontrolled energy. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. The wave is starting to fragment. Maya could see it too. The redirected energy was becoming unstable, threatening to break free of their carefully constructed channels. They needed something more, something to stabilize the final phase of barrier construction. Symphony, she called through the interface. Can your people synchronize with the barrier frequency? The crystal entity pulsed with understanding. Yes, but it would require us to partially phase into your reality. The process would be painful. All crystal entities acknowledge. Symphony continued after a moment. We are prepared. Maya felt a surge of respect for these beings who had fled their dying universe, only to risk themselves to save their new home. Do it. The crystal entities began to change, their perfect geometric forms becoming more substantial, more real. They were sacrificing their quantum nature, binding themselves to this universe to stabilize the barrier. 90%. The ship shuddered as reality fluctuated around them. Maya gripped her console, watching as the final pieces fell into place. The barrier was almost complete, but the strain on all their systems was reaching critical levels. We need more power for the final sequence, Kelvin reported, his scales now pale with exhaustion. Divert everything, High Counselor Venra commanded. Even life support if necessary. We've come too far to fail now. Human ships began to power down non-essential systems, their crews working in darkness and cold to provide every last bit of energy. Alliance vessels channeled power from their ancient archives, depleting centuries of stored energy in moments. The crystal entities pulsed with the last of their quantum resonance. And then, with a flash that temporarily blinded every sensor in the system, it was done. The barrier stood complete. a shimmering quantum matrix that stretched across 7 dimensions, protecting both universes from collapse while allowing controlled interaction between them. The shockwave had been fully absorbed and redirected, its energy now part of the very thing created to stop it. In the silence that followed, Maya looked out at what they had achieved. The crystal entities now gleamed with a more solid light, their forms a perfect blend of quantum and physical reality. Alliance ships hung in space beside human vessels, their differences seeming small compared to what they'd accomplished together. Barrier stability confirmed, Symphony announced, its voice carrying new depth through the interface. Both universes are safe. All ships reporting in, Chen added. We did it, Doc. We actually did it. Maya smiled as she watched the crystal entities begin to explore their new form, adapting to their partial materialization in this universe. The Alliance fleet was already beginning to analyze the barrier structure, while human ships conducted their characteristic unorthodox sensor suites. No, she corrected softly. We all did it. Together. High Counselor Venra's hologram appeared, her scales showing colors Maya had never seen before. The Alliance Council has convened an emergency session. They wish to discuss changes to our previous policies regarding interaction between species. About time. Chen commented with a grin. Turns out the galaxy's a lot more interesting when we work together. Symphony of Order approached the observation window, its newly solid form casting rainbow patterns across the deck. We have much to teach each other, it observed, and much to learn. Maya looked out at the barrier, now a permanent reminder of what could be achieved when different species chose to combine their strengths rather than fear their differences. The end of one crisis had become the dawn of something entirely new. Well then, she said, smiling at her unlikely collection of colleagues and friends, let's get started.